Hi guys, it's Nicole. Welcome back to another video. It is 2023, so it is really time for me to sit down and chat to you about my favorite reads of 2022, which is what we're going to be doing today. But I do want to go in by saying that there were a lot of honorable mentions, books I did really enjoy but didn't quite make it on this list for one reason or another. I just wanted to give them a little spotlight here. I will say that 2022 was not the greatest reading year for me. If you followed me at all, you probably know there were like a good few months. I think it was 3 to 4 months that I just wasn't actively reading, which is something I haven't done in a very long time. So I feel like I really got to make an effort in 2023 to be actively reading and to find more favorites. When it did come to me sitting down and planning what books were going to make it into this video, it was really quite easy. In previous years it was really difficult because I had so many favorites I wanted to include. So I did just want to mention that, but let's just get into the book I want to talk about first, and that is Finlay Donovan is Killing It. This book follows a single mother who is a writer, and one day she is at lunch with her agent discussing her new novel that she's working on, and she's overheard. Their conversation is overheard and she's mistaken as an assassin for hire, and she gets offered a target. It then just goes on all these shenanigans and dramatic scenes and crime and getting involved in things and trying not to get involved in things and somehow being the center of it. I just loved this book. It was just fun. It is very dramatic and quirky, not believable at all, but just so much fun. And I think my enjoyment levels were so high that I was able to suspend my disbelief that I wasn't nitpicking all the details and how easy things were working out. I was just having fun. And I read this at a time where I was starting to feel really slumpy. This was one of the last books I sort of read before my 3 to 4 month hiatus from reading. So I think of this book so highly because it was read in a period of time where I just wasn't enjoying a lot of what I was reading. So it stands out a lot for that reason. The next book on this list is In My Dreams I Hold a Knife by Ashley Winstead. This book follows a group of friends who are having a school reunion. It's a 10-year reunion. They haven't all been together for some time, so it's the first time they're all together, but they used to not just be a group of 6. There was also a friend of theirs from college that was murdered, and the murder was never solved. However, it is one of the friends in the friendship group. It is a story that just switches between past and present. Present day, they're all together at the reunion. Their secrets from the past are being revealed and the clues to the murder are all being put together, and then we do get flashbacks of the past. I loved the structure and setup of this book. I think it was so fantastic. It really kept the story going and it made it such a page turner. But also I think sometimes when there is a past narrative in the story, it can really drag out the story too much, but that didn't happen here, and I loved getting the past. I loved seeing what was happening, and I think it just worked in a really nice way because their secrets were their secrets from the past, so you would kind of see that, and then you'd see the present day reaction to all the friends finding out what that friend was up to and what secret they had, and it was so fun. I read this very quickly. I listened to the audiobook of it. I really enjoyed following our main character Jessica. She is very flawed, sort of messed up, not someone you want to support, but you kind of do support. At least I did. I just think this was really fantastic storytelling, and it definitely just made me want to read all the books this author writes and also more books of this sort of genre. Next up, I have a book that I've been meaning to read for many years, and I finally got to it towards the end of 2022, and that is Poison Study by Maria V. Snyder. I adore this book. We follow a protagonist, Yelena. She has been a prisoner for some time and she is currently awaiting her execution date. However, before her execution date, she gets the offer to become the taste tester for the commander in this military dictatorship that the setting is in. So Yelena does choose to become the taste tester, and we follow her journey with that. I loved this book so much. I think from the beginning there was just so much intrigue. There's intrigue with Yelena's character, like who is she, what did she do to end up in prison that's going to get her executed, like what crime did she commit. There's so much intrigue with the political climate as well, because it's set in this military dictatorship where this commander is just like, in recent years, within 15 years, has just taken over this country that they're in, and there's still a lot of like conflict with neighboring countries. There's also a lot of intrigue with magic users, because there are magic users in this world, which we don't really know too much about in this first book, but you know that they're exiled, and that if any were spotted, they would be ordered to be executed on the spot by the commander. I loved this. I think it was so fun. I really enjoyed Yelena's character, and I can't wait to read the rest of the series. It's really good. Yeah, this book was one of those books that just reminded me what it was like to fall in love with reading. It just had a very classic YA fantasy feel, and I really fell in love with reading when I was reading YA fantasy as a teenager, and it just really took me back. So it was a very magical experience. So my third favorite book of 2022 was The Miracles of Namiya General Store by Keigo Higashino. I just had the most magical reading experience reading this book. It is just a very magical book. We follow three delinquents who are currently on the run from a robbery they've just committed, and they hide out in this abandoned general store that they come across. And while they're hiding out, they get this letter that is delivered through the front door slot, the mail slot. The mail slot, that's what I mean, of the front door of the general store. They open up the letter, and it says letter from this young girl or young woman who is asking some quite serious like life advice. And it turns out that when this general store was up and running, that the owner of the general store also had a bit of a side job where people would write their letters to him, letters of concerns that they have, asking for advice and wisdom, and he would reply. And so the delinquents end up replying to this letter, and then this book switches narratives. We get POVs of the people who write the letters, so we kind of get the letters in a sense, and like what their life scenario is that they're struggling with currently and what they need advice of. But then we also switch to the owner of the general store and his life, and how he started up the whole response to these letters in the first place. It is a beautiful story because all the pieces, all the different stories end up weaving together, and I love when books do that. I love it when it feels like a little bit of a short story collection, but in the end the whole story comes together. And I loved how all the stories connected. I thought it was very beautiful. It's just a very heartwarming, touching story. How I would describe this book is it is a slice of life story with a touch of magic. It's beautiful. I really enjoyed it. I highly recommend it. Keigo Higashino is one of my favorite authors. I've read a lot of books by him, but this is the first book of his that I've read that is not part of his thriller mystery genre of books. This is very different to what I've read previously, and I really want to read more like this of his, but I can't because so many of his books aren't translated into English, unfortunately. So like maybe one day I will get to read more like this, but we'll have to wait and see. But I just adored this so much. I know I'm going to reread it. I want to annotate it more. I tried to annotate little bits of it, but I just got too caught up in the story. It was just so enchanting and magical. I really struggled to put it down. My second favorite read of 2022 was Record of a Spaceborne Few by Becky Chambers. This book, I think, became a favorite because of how much it took me by surprise. This is the third book in the Wayfarers series by Becky Chambers, which is a sci-fi series set in space, essentially. They're all very cozy. You know how everyone's kind of on a high at the moment with the cozy fantasy? I would say this is cozy sci-fi. So with book one and book two, I did enjoy them, but I never loved them as much as I feel the Becky Chambers stands of the world have. This book, however, just it made me understand like what everyone was talking about with the previous books. I loved it so much. The story takes place on this Exodus fleet, which is this fleet of humans. It was sort of made at a desperate time of humanity when sort of the earth was, I think, dying, they said, and they made this fleet, and it has a lot of humanity's culture. So it's a relic, it's very sort of treasured in that way, but also the humans who live on this fleet, they are born and they live there and they die there. They don't really go off exploring. They don't get a lot of people coming to visit the fleet. It's very isolated. This whole story takes place within this community, this like large community on this fleet, and we follow multiple different characters. It very much just follows these characters' everyday lives and how they contribute or how they just live on this fleet and what life is like. We follow like a young boy who is very curious about the outside world. He really wants to go off adventuring. We follow this elderly lady who's lived her entire life on the fleet, and then we follow a newcomer who has just arrived at the fleet. He is from outside and he is hoping to make himself at home at this fleet and integrate himself within the community. A lot of the themes in this is about community, about home, about like safety within the home, and I loved it. And I think the theme of home just like was what really struck a chord with me and resonated with me and made this a favorite. So it was a very unexpected 5-star read for me. I wasn't thinking it was going to be rated that highly. And that brings us down to my favorite book of 2022, which is Daughter of the Moon Goddess by Su Lin Tan. I actually read this a couple of times in 2022. The first time I read it, I gave it 4 stars, and the second time I read it, I gave it 5 stars. I adored this so much. We follow our young protagonist Xin Yang, who is basically on the quest to save her mother. Her mother is the moon goddess, and she is essentially imprisoned on the moon by the celestial emperor. And Xin Yang has lived her entire life on the moon with her mother, and she finds herself fleeing from her home into new territory and is then on a goal to improve herself in terms of strength and also achieve her ultimate goal of freeing her mother. That's essentially the story, and along the way she completes many quests. She learns skills such as archery. She navigates the political setting in the celestial kingdom. She becomes the companion to a prince. She joins the army for a bit. There is so much going on. She visits the different celestial kingdoms. There's a lot going on, and I really enjoyed it. I think the fact that there was so much happening all the time made the story like very addictive to read. I loved Xin Yang as a character. I loved the love triangle in this. It's just so magical. I think what I love about this is it just gave me the feeling that my favorite movie of all time always gives me, and that is Stardust, which is based on the book by Neil Gaiman, but I don't really like to acknowledge the book because I don't like it that much. But the movie I absolutely adore, and it's just very adventurous and magical, and it's just like the fantasy story I always go back to because it has all the elements of a fantasy story I want to see, and like this book had that, and I love it. I know I'm going to be rereading this so many times in the future, and I cannot wait to see what Su Lin Tan writes next because this was her debut book, which is incredible. So I am hoping for very good things. So yes, that is it. Those are my 6 favorite books from 2022. I had not the greatest reading year, but I'm very happy that I did find some favorites and some books that I'm definitely planning to reread as many times as I can in the future, and I can't wait to see what 2023 brings. Hopefully more faves. Anyway, let me know if you've read any of these or if you're planning to pick any of them up. Thank you so much for watching. That's it for now. Hopefully I'll see you next time, and happy reading. Bye.